Hello, good afternoon, everybody. It's just turned 12 o'clock, so we'll get started with this morning's webinar, or this afternoon's webinar. Thank you, first of all, for joining. Just a bit of housekeeping as well before we do actually get going. Everybody is currently on mute on the webinar, just to stop any kind of background noise and interference. We do have some time set aside at the back end of the session just for a Q&A. But so the reason we've put together this webinar, we're asking kind of the question, is cloud software and cloud bookkeeping too expensive for small clients? So what we've found as a business, speaking to other accountancy practices, is that with your book of clients that you've got at the moment, there tends to be a demographic where you've got your larger limited companies where bookkeeping systems and are more suited to them, and kind of the price point for those systems aren't really too much of an issue or a barrier for those particular clients. But as you kind of trickle down and you get to your smaller sized clients, we're tending to find with a lot of practices that there's a bit of resistance to them paying for a cloud-based platform. So what we then tend to find is that those clients are still potentially on spreadsheets, or they're on really kind of basic and somewhat inadequate softwares that are available either free or for a couple of pounds kind of per license. So what we've kind of done at Nomisma and what we're looking to achieve and solve is making the cloud platform and cloud computing and bookkeeping available to all at a reasonable price. Just to give you a bit of background about Nomisma, I appreciate that some of you may never have heard of us before. So we were actually developed within an accountancy practice many years ago, so going back to 2014. What then happened was that the practice started using the software as an internal tool, and they just kept adding features to the software. Got to the point in 2020 where it was a case of, well, we've got it kind of now as we want it. It's really helping our practice. Why don't we kind of brand that up and release it as its own product in its own right, and sell it to other practices as well. So in 2020, the development team got invested in heavily. So we've now got 72 developers working on the software. As of, I think, January 2021, we had, I believe, 120 or so practices using the software. Current count to date, we've got over 600 practices now using Nomisma, and between those 600 practices, we're looking after 10,000 businesses looking after their books. So where we like to think we're different from other providers in the market, and we actually have a full suite of products. So from end to end, from kind of onboarding and working on and generating leads for your practice, right through to then doing the bookkeeping, filing any related accounts and tax returns, and also payroll as well. Everything is sat within one interface, which integrates, which obviously the benefits of that is it saves you time rather than using disparate systems, which we do find as well, particularly with those smaller clients. You've got one system for bookkeeping, on something else for payroll, on something else for CRM and practice management. Nomisma brings everything together in one place. We built it from a practice point of view as well, obviously with us being born out of a practice. We have come across providers out there where it's directed mainly at the business, and then there may be kind of a tool for the accountant to link those together, whereas we're kind of practice centric for you to manage your clients. We have a kind of a pay-as-you-grow model. So we basically have a kind of £5 minimum spend per month, which is obviously nothing that equates to one bookkeeping license. What I'll do as well, just before we look at the software itself, is I'll actually kind of go through the pricing and provide that upfront. Just as we then go through, you can then build up that value and see where the benefits lie for your specific practice. So to give you an idea of how the pricing works, so if you have a client, whether it's a limited company or a sole trader, and you wanted to use Nomisma for their bookkeeping, it's £5 plus VAT per month. Within that, your client, they have access to the Nomisma bookkeeping app. They can take photos of their receipts and upload them to the bookkeeping platform. They can also raise sales invoices and supplier bills from there, particularly with those smaller clients as well. Obviously, you may be receiving paper receipts and invoices from them at the end of the year. Obviously, from their point of view, come that time, they have to find all the receipts and the invoices and collate them all together. You'll probably get ones as well where it's just stuffed in a carrier bag in no order in particular, and then you have to go through and sort it out. With the ability for them to use that app, they can just keep track of their receipts as they go through the year, rather than having a mad rush towards year end. Also as well, just in regards to that, obviously making tax digital for income tax and self-assessment is coming in over the next couple of years. So those clients where if they breach that threshold, but they're not on any systems at the moment, the reporting's going to monthly. So rather than that just happening once a year, it will then happen once a quarter. Yes, there'll be less kind of paperwork to get through because it'll be just divided up by 4. But obviously it's then kind of managing that and tracking it. So it would be really useful to get those type of clients onto the system. If the clients are VAT registered as well, you can produce and file their VAT returns through the system. What then happens is if you've got the bookkeeping license for that client on Nomisma, come year end, you can produce their set of accounts, you can file the corporation tax return and any related self-assessment returns as well for the directors of that company, if it's a limited company, all for that £5 plus VAT per client per month. In terms of payroll, that is £3 plus VAT per client per month. For up to 10 employees, anything after that, it's then 50p per employee. Another thing to point out as well with Nomisma is you can actually use the modules independently of one another. So again, there are providers out there that we've come across where you have to have bookkeeping as a base, and then you add kind of the payroll on. If you just wanted to use us for payroll, that's not a problem at all. We then have this option here, so final accounts and self-assessments only clients. So it may well be that you want to use Nomisma just for the accounts and tax side. You may have clients who are on a bookkeeping package that they're perfectly happy with. What you can do is you can bring in the trial balance at year end. You can then produce a set of accounts and file them to Companies House and the CT 600 to Hmrc. That's classed as one submission. So you would then just be charged £5 plus VAT for that submission. Likewise, for the self-assessments, that's £5 plus VAT per submission. But if there are any related partnership returns as well for that individual, that is included just as part of that one filing. So it's £5 on a pay-as-you-go basis, but we do have price points as well, where if you purchase credits in bulk, the price per return actually does come down. It bottoms out at £2 plus VAT per return or per filing. We also have a CRM module, so that's priced at £29 plus VAT per user per month. What that does is that takes you through the process of having a lead come into the business, quoting for them and sending out a proposal, getting that electronically signed, and then going through their onboarding process. You can do manual AML checks through the system, or you can pay, I think it's credit safe, we use £2 plus VAT per check. We do also have a company secretarial module sat within CRM, which is 30p per business per month. So you can incorporate companies for free on the software, but you still have to pay Companies House's charges for that. But then, yeah, it's 30p per month for them to sit on the system. So any changes to shareholders, filing confirmation statements, you can do that through the system. This slide is slightly busy, so I won't kind of go through everything on here, but just to give you an idea of how kind of Nomisma works. So we've got two kind of distinct modules. So the CRM, and then there's the compliance side of things. So within compliance, you've got the bookkeeping, payroll, and final accounts and tax. The two modules do integrate with one another, but you can, if you want to, just use them independently as well. With payroll, kind of a couple of key features in there. You can automate payrolls where the amount is the same each period, which is really useful. So at the beginning of the year, you can simply set it up to run, and it will run on a set date, and it will send out any payslips if requested, any summary report, and also file the RTI submissions. From a bookkeeping point of view, we've got unlimited mobile bank feeds in there as well. There's obviously the receipt capture element for your clients, that's all included, multiple currencies, and we've got a PDF converter as well, if any clients are sending you bank statements as a PDF, we can convert that into a CSV for you just to upload that into the system. With the accounts and tax side, particularly if you're using bookkeeping with the integrated element of it, will basically generates the final accounts quickly for you. It just sucks that information through from bookkeeping. You can then drill down as well on those figures on the return, taking you back into the ledger book. We do have a partnership as well with a company called SignEasy for e-signatures. So for self-assessments, final accounts and CT600s, you can actually get those e-signed within Nomisma. Again, that's all included in the pricing that we've just been through. I mentioned as well CRM, that just takes you through from getting a lead into the business, going through all the kind of the onboarding side and quoting for them, and then getting that signed, going through onboarding, and then you've got the CRM system where you've got things like two-way email integrations just to track all the emails that are coming in and out to those clients. Within the software as well, so on the compliance side of things, there is an overarching kind of practice management element, which we'll look at shortly when we look at the software. But as you go through and enter obviously your deadline dates into each module and each job, the software will then track that within the platform itself, just to make sure you can keep on top of all your work as hopefully as your practice is growing. So we'll now have a quick look at the software itself. If I mentioned before, we're going to have a little kind of, or we'll have some time at the end for a Q&A session. If you do have any questions, just as we go through within Zoom, if anyone's new to Zoom, there's a Q&A box. Just as we go through, if you start entering your questions into there as and when they crop up, and then what I'll do, I'll just work my way through those in the last kind of 10-15 minutes of the session. So I'm logged into Nomisma here. Let me just move my Zoom box out of the way. So I'm logged into Nomisma. My practice name is The Simpsons. To add clients to the system, it's really straightforward. You simply click on New Clients here, and the system will then take you through a really simple wizard. So you basically select the client type. A good one to show is limited companies. So as an example, if it's a limited company that's already in existence, we can actually find that data on Companies House for you and pull through the company name and the director details as well. So I can just click create on there to create that company. You can add them in manually, and you can also actually batch upload client lists as well. So if you are already a relatively established practice and you've got a list of clients within another software or just on a database and you want to start using Nomisma, you can actually import that file or that list of clients into the software rather than obviously just having to go through and add them one by one. Just going back to the dashboard, so you'll find as you, so on the left-hand side here where we've got kind of the panel with all the various modules that we have, you'll find that each module has its own dashboard, which is specific to that job type. But this dashboard here, this gives you a big, or kind of an overview of everything that's going on in your practice. So these KPIs across the top here, these relate to the bookkeeping side of things. So again, if you've got, or if you're new to kind of cloud bookkeeping and that receipt capture element of it, if I logged in one morning, for example, I can see that across all of my clients, I've had 132 receipts that have been uploaded. I can click on that number there. It will show me which companies have been uploading those receipts. If I wanted to, I can access those, their profiles from there, or I can access the receipts as well that they've uploaded just by clicking on that number there, obviously for me to then bookkeep them. You can see a breakdown as well of your clients. So if I clicked on clients there, it would basically show me a list of all my clients on the system, but you can break it down by the client type. So whether they're a limited company, a sole trader. If I want to, I can break down that data by the jobs that I offer as well. So I might want to see just any kind of VAT returns I do. I can see my clients that way. I can go even more specific as well. So if I wanted to see limited company clients who I do the bookkeeping for, I can click on that number there and it will produce that list for me. Another really useful point, so I mentioned we've got kind of this overarching practice management element within Nomisma. As you enter your deadlines into your jobs that go onto the software, it will track these deadlines for you. So as you can see, we've got our timeframes here. the different types of jobs, and I can see as well, I've got a load of work overdue here. But if I kind of logged on, say if I've been away for whatever reason for a good while, I've got a load of work overdue, I can see quickly what work is overdue. I can click on that number there, and it takes me through and shows me all the final accounts, clients that I've got that are overdue. And again, I can quickly access them from here through that report. We'll take a look at the bookkeeping side of things first of all. So if I just go into my list of limited company bookkeeping clients here, and I'll just choose this company here, Barney's Bolorama. What the software will do is it'll take me through to their bookkeeping profile, and we're now on the bookkeeping dashboard for this particular company. We've got some KPIs across the top here. This time it's obviously specific to this client. So we've got 0 unreconciled bank transactions. We've got 8 receipts that need to be bookkept. We've got a number of unallocated sales and unallocated purchases, and you can access all these lists from here. We then have some graphs, so sales, banking, and you can flick between different bank accounts, and then some reports as well, so profits after tax, balance sheet, and direct balances. And then in the bottom left corner here, we've just got some key deadlines. So this is the dashboard that you can see, but also your client can see when they log in from their side. So they've got real-time information on how their business is performing. From their side of things, so we've already mentioned they can upload the receipts via the app. They can also as well raise sales invoices and supplier bills, provided you've given them permissions to do that in the software. We also as well have this more advanced dashboard view. So if I click on here, it basically just removes the graphs, gives you some more detail around sales, purchases, dividends, director balances. And from here, you can actually jump through and just access those ledger books from there. You'll find as well as I move through the system, or if you kind of have a trial of the software or decide to start using Nomisma, there's usually more than one way of completing the same task. So from this dashboard here, we can do things like raise invoices and upload invoices and create new customers and raise new supplier bills. You can also do that as well from the sales and expenditure dashboards. So if we briefly look at sales, first of all, we've got a list of all of our invoices here. We can filter through them as well up at the top. And from the top right-hand corner, this is where you can raise your invoices. You can set up repeat invoices as well. If you just had some figures you wanted to key in, you can go through batch entry. You can set up credit notes. Another useful one is actually being able to create quotes on the system, which you can then in turn change to invoices should they become an actual job. Likewise through expenditure, similar layouts just to keep everything familiar. And again, from the top right-hand corner there, that's where you can raise new supplier bills, batch bills as well, and debit notes and VAT-only bills. Moving on to banking, so those of you who are familiar and may use cloud bookkeeping softwares already, a really useful feature within those is to have automatic bank feeds. So that's something we have, and again is included in the pricing. But if I just click on new here and set up new bank feed, so this is something that your clients would set up. So they would just come to this screen here, they'd enter their bank into here, and just go through and log on. And basically that then links their bank accounts to the Nomisma bookkeeping software, and it will just pull through those bank transactions into the system for those of you who are unfamiliar how the bank transactions work. We do have as well the ability to just upload bank statements via CSV. So if your clients are sending them to you in CSV formats, you can simply just go through that upload process. We do speak to quite a few practices as well, who find that some of their clients will send them PDF bank statements through. Obviously, then you've got a bit of a problem of getting that into the system. Some practices just kind of spend time going through and keying those figures in, which is obviously quite time consuming. So a few weeks ago, we actually released this feature here. So what this feature will do, so it only works with a few select banks at the moment. So if I just select that drop down there, if you have a PDF bank statement from any of these banks, you can simply choose it. You can choose the file and click upload. What the software will do is it will actually then convert that PDF bank statement into a CSV file. That way, then you can just come to banking and then just upload that CSV. So again, if you are kind of spending a lot of time going through and kind of keying in all that information, the software can help you there. If I just go through to Reconcile Transactions, again, some of you may already be familiar with bank rules. So what you can do is you can set up rules based on kind of the descriptions and the figures that are pulled through from the bank transactions. And it's something that, generally speaking, you build up over time as you work with a client. But this condition here, as an example, so allocate a bank transaction to an account if description has a specific text. I've already got some bank rules set up. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to highlight all the transactions and run the rules against them. And what the software will do is it will automatically reconcile those bank transactions to the account that's within the rules. If you've not got any rules set up, you can simply just choose the accounts from here, and you can just type in the nominal code or description as well, and we'll find those for you. As mentioned as well, if your clients are VAT registered, you can produce your VAT returns and file them to Hmrc through the system, again, all within that £5 plus VAT per month. There's a tab there just for entering MTD settings. Underneath Advisor Tools, so here you can post your journals and your adjustments. You can set up bank rules from here as well if you want to, and you can import trial balances. So if you started using Nomisma mid-year, for example, you can just bring in your opening balance via a CSV import. Underneath reports, so we've got a few commonly used ones. So if I go into profit and loss, for example, another useful feature is you can actually compare prior periods really quickly. So if I wanted to compare this month with the 11 previous months, I can quickly produce that report on the system. You can export to CSV as well. So if you wanted to then import it, if you're using cash flow or forecasting software, for example, or if you just wanted to do any work on it within Excel. But with these figures as well, again, you can then drill back into the relevant ledger books from that screen. If we then fast forward, we're at the point now where we've got our final trial balance and we're ready to produce our set of final accounts. What I can do, I can just click on the Final Accounts module. It will take me through to a dashboard now for Barney's Bolorama. It will show me this little step-by-step guide as well and kind of workflow of where we're up to. So we're currently at the approving stage, so it's been sent out for approval by that client. To send out the final accounts and corporation tax, if you go to the document screen here, you can simply click e-sign and it will send out an email directly from the system with a link to sign the return and the set of accounts themselves. So again, a massive time saver. So you may be kind of printing off your returns and your accounts to have them manually signed. You can switch from doing that to having them electronically signed. Also as well, we speak to a lot of practices who will have kind of 5, 6, 7, 8 different systems for different jobs. One of them is obviously, generally speaking, kind of e-signature software. Everything's contained in Nomisma. So I was speaking to a practice the other week, just as an example, who with their current software, they would export the accounts and corporation tax return, log in to their e-signature software, create an envelope and upload that document. It would then get sent out for signature. Once it's returned, they then have to download it, import it back into their final account, so it's sat on their record. Whereas with Nomisma, all of that is just kind of streamlined and done through the software itself. Any signed documents then would just sit in here. Basically, to generate a set of accounts, all you need to do is select full accounts here. As mentioned, it integrates with the bookkeeping side of things, so it just pulls through the information into the set of accounts. Underneath note templates and account settings, that's where you can change things like the wording in any of these sections and the reporting standard. In terms of reporting standards, you can produce accounts for sole traders, dormant accounts, FRS 102.1a and FRS 105 at the moment. If I just jump through the report as well, if I go to the income statements, for example, again, another really useful feature with the integrated interface and platform, you can actually jump back to, or you can drill down into these figures. So if I wanted to look at my turnover from the previous year, it will show me what accounts are making up that figure, and then I can drill down again and go back into the ledger book from the previous year. You have the figures as well, pull through to the CT computation. So we've got our final profits for that particular year. Obviously, the calculation is carried out for you. We then have our supporting documents, so things like R&D and capital allowances. you can enter into here. So you just simply click on edit and enter them into the forms, which again will then obviously calculate on the computation itself. When the time comes to submit the final accounts, you simply just go to submit and follow the steps through. Likewise with the corporation tax, you can just come to here and submit the CT 600 following the kind of step-by-step guide. So you just lock the return and then follow the process through. So that's the bookkeeping, final accounts and corporation tax side of the software. If I just go back to the Agent Hub, we'll have a quick look at the self-assessment side. So if I go first of all to the self-assessment dashboard, across the top here, we've got some key KPIs that are just relating to the self-assessment this time. And across the bottom here, or at the bottom here and across the top, we've got this workflow which takes you through step by step producing your self-assessments right through to filing. The majority of this process as well is actually automated. So just as an example here, in our not started column, we've got a total of 1 that we've not yet started. What we can do is at this point, we can actually send out a tax questionnaire to that particular client. You can do it en masse as well if there was more than 1, but the software takes you this little wizard. We can then create our email. So we do have predefined email templates. Again, you can kind of customize these to suit your practice. But what the software will do is it will send out a link to this questionnaire here. And your clients can actually answer those questions online. And then once they've answered them in return, that basically comes back to you, lands back within Nomisma. And you can actually use the figures on the return, on the questionnaire to populate the return itself. So again, really useful time saver. Everything's contained within the system, and rather than having to kind of look at the answers given and key in the information, you can minimize the risk of making a mistake just by ticking a box and pulling through those figures. But we'll look at that shortly. I won't click send on here just so I don't email my colleague. But basically what happens is if I had click send, that 1 then would join those 4 in questionnaire sent. We do as well have the option to send a reminder through. So obviously clients being clients, there'll be people that ignore you or put you on the back burner or just simply forget. And then you can just, again, click that button there and go through and send them the reminder through. Once you've received a response, it will then move into the response received column. We then know, obviously, we can start working on that return. If I just go into a client record though, for self-assessment, so I'll go into this gentleman here, this James High Net Worth. So on their dashboard, in the top right-hand corner here, this is where you can import data from that questionnaire that's been sent out. So from here, we can then just tick that box there if we want to pull through those figures provided to the return. We also can link up to the individual's online accounts with Hmrc. So if I click on get data from Hmrc here, obviously this is a made up client, so I'm not linked to any online accounts, but this just gives you an idea of what information you can pull down from Hmrc. And again, you can then choose to just pull that through to the return itself. Just going back to the dashboard, we've got the tax return status, we've got headline key figures, work status notes. So if you've got if it's you and kind of a team at the practice, if you're working on things together, any changes that are made, it just shows you who's made that change and when. A really simple feature, but really useful. We've got these internal notes here, so it's just a little whiteboard where you and colleagues can jot down anything, any reminders. Down at the bottom of the return here, we've got quick access to tax return forms. So from here, you can access the forms themselves, or you can access them through the menus on the left-hand side as well. A couple of things to point out. So if you run the payroll through Nomisma, kind of prime example is a director-only payroll. If you're running that through Nomisma and you also do their self-assessment return, their payroll information can link through to the SA102 form. Another quite frequent request that we have as well, where some providers don't necessarily have it, or you can't use the revenues gateway, and we've got the SA109 form for non-residents returns. If I just go to the Documents tab here as well, So within here, we've got all the different forms, calculations, and computations that you can produce through Nomisma. And we have here as well a documents tab, and you can upload documents to save them against the client's record. So again, rather than potentially having either a physical file with those kind of back-end schedules on there, or even just a file saved elsewhere on your system. Again, particularly if there's more than one person at the practice, you can upload the supporting documents to here. And it almost works as a working paper file where you can access those documents no matter where you are that make up the figures on the tax return. Underneath the communications tab here, so this will show you any emails that you've sent out through Nomisma relating to the self-assessment side of things. You can preview them as well, so it will just show you what email has been sent and when it was sent. You can send out emails there and then, or you can actually schedule emails. You can also send emails en masse as well. So if I just briefly go back to the Agent Hub, you can set up your different email templates on here, and you can create your own or use the ones we provide as standard. But you can then actually schedule emails as well, should you wish to go out on a set time and date. Just going back to here though, in regards to getting self-assessment returns signed off by clients, this time you've actually got two different options. So again, you can just send it through via email to be electronically signed, but we actually also have a self-assessment app that your clients can use. So it's a really useful tool. Again, it's kind of completely free for your clients to use. It's just included in the subscription. So I'm just on the Google Play Store. It does work with Apple phones as well. But what your clients can do on here is they can update their personal information, which then flows through into the software for you. You can then have them view their tax returns and approve them through the app itself. So again, obviously, really kind of useful little tool for you to use as a practice, rather than having them come in or physically sign them, or even through kind of having to log in through an email. They can just open up the app, no matter where they are, review their tax return and approve it. Once it's been approved, they'll then get this message here just showing that the tax return itself has been approved. It will show them their key figures, the tax due. So this individual's got very lightly this year, just a bill of £10.27. There's a link there as well where it says make tax payment, which will take them through to the Hmrc website and their accounts, where they can just then log in and make that payment. That's pretty much everything on the self-assessment side of things. Again, when you're then ready to file those returns as they kind of get signed off, just simply go to submit to Hmrc and send that information through to the revenue. Finally, on the compliance side of the software is the payroll side of things. So again, we've got a specific dashboard for the payroll with their KPIs. You can as well on the payroll side of things, which is usually kind of a big benefit, or we find is quite a big benefit, particularly if you're switching from a provider already. You can import the companies and employees information in. Obviously, there's a lot of nitty-gritty information around payroll, so you can bring that all in via a CSV import, which we can help with. The dashboard here, so it separates out into payroll and when that's due, also pension submissions. You can separate it out as well by staff members. So if you've got a payroll team, you can assign different payrolls to each member of staff. If I just go into a payroll, so I'll just find Barney's Bolorama again. So if we go into their payroll profile, just a few things to point out. So in terms of, if I just go into edit company and go into the company details, you can actually upload logos to payslips. So again, speaking to other practices, some will upload their own logo just for kind of a bit of marketing and branding. Some practices actually quote two different prices for payroll. So they'll quote just for standard payslips with their own logo, or they'll quote slightly more for their clients to actually have their own logo on the payslips. Obviously, some won't go for it, but some do, and then it's just basic money for old rope. Underneath payroll details, So a couple of things to point out on here. So again, I mentioned before when we're going through the slides about how the software integrates. A further integration is between bookkeeping and payroll. So if you did use them both for a particular client, you can link the bookkeeping and payroll profile to one another, and then any payroll journals that are produced will actually then be posted automatically back into the bookkeeping software for you. You can select here if P11D is relevant. For those of you who have any CIS clients, you can select if they're registered for CIS on here. And then underneath payroll settings, this is where you can set up the frequency, but this is where you can automate the payroll just by clicking that button there and going through a little wizard just to set that up. As mentioned before, what would happen then is the payroll would just run automatically on that day of the month. It would send out payslips, send out a summary report, and submit the RTI submissions for you. So a massive kind of time saver rather than having to go in each month and run those payrolls manually. Get into the pension details and then general terms. Again, another useful feature is you can enter bank details into the company and clients, or sorry, company and employees to produce BACS reports to send to the bank. We've separated out the pension dashboard separately. We do have some schemes that we automatically link with, and you can submit the pension information through Nomisma. You then have your tax payment summary report here. Filing management, which shows you where those submissions are up to. Obviously mine are all failed or pending because it's not a real company. You can add in and track leave as well. And then you've got your reports section there where you can look at things like payslips. You can link up to Hmrc as well for any notice changes, which you can do at company level or as a bureau. Just going back to the payroll dashboard, just one thing as well to kind of point out within the employee details. When it comes to administering the payslips, there's a few different ways you can do it. So you can send an email to the employer only for them to then distribute. You can send them to employees or both. But we, again, also have an app that your client's employees can download. So there's a Nomisma Payroll App. When you then run the payroll and send out the payslips, those employees who are using the app can actually access their payslip through the app itself, rather than having to log in through an email. You can run the payroll as well, as mentioned, kind of on kind of a bureau level. So if I go to run payroll here, it will show me all the payrolls. I can select them en masse or pick and choose which ones I want to run, and then run them from up here. I can submit my RTIs as well from here, again en masse. Submit P11Ds to Hmrc, and then submit the pension contributions as well through here, just down at the bottom there. From a CIS point of view, so for those of you who have any contractors, we've separated out the dashboard into a separate one just to make it easier to track them, but ultimately they will link to the payroll profile. So I've got some key KPIs again across here, a list of upcoming returns. Again, you can separate it out by the accountant with that practice management element. We've then got our list of contractors, so you can add a new contractor into here. I'll just open up Barney's Bolorama. You can then add your subbies up here. I've already got one in, so I'll just click on this subcontractor here. And if I go into here and add an invoice, you can just enter the amounts. Software will calculate it for you. I'll click on save, but I'm not putting my invoice dates, so it won't actually save it. But then that information then links through and pulls through to the payroll side of things for you. Quite a useful feature as well. So we've got further reports for CIS specific clients, and then you can actually import subcontractor lists as well. So obviously if you've got a contractor who's got a really quite long extensive list of subbies, you can just bring those in to the system via CSV. We are also working as well on a link in terms of development to link the CIS bookkeeping clients to the CIS payroll side of things as well, which will hopefully be in the software in the not too distant future. And that's pretty much everything in the compliance side of the software. I'm just going to briefly log out of here. Let me just sign out of everything. And I'll just sign in to my other accounts, which I've got CRM on. So I won't spend too long on CRM just because it's a whole kind of full-blown system in its own right, and I could quite easily talk about it for a good few hours. But the idea is that it takes you through a step-by-step process of adding leads, first of all, into the system. So you can add them just as they come in. So it might be a referral. If you've got client lists or prospective client lists that you work from, you can import those into the system. You can then do things like marketing campaigns, SMS message campaigns through the CRM system. Once you have a conversation with a lead and it's progressing, you can then go through the quote and contract phase. So within the settings of CRM, what you can do is you can put in any bundles that you offer or packages and any services and how much you charge for them. You can then go through a step-by-step wizard, and it will basically put together a pricing proposal for you with your terms and conditions, your letter of engagement, and then you can then send those out to, again, be electronically signed. Once they're electronically signed, that particular client will then fall into the onboarding process. So I've got 0 not started, 12 in progress. But if I had 1 not started here, I can then start going through that process of onboarding them. So it'll take me through kind of the know your client checks. And if I want to then do that digitally or manually, but it will take me through step by step and make sure I've got all that information relating to that client in the system. If I then go to my client list, so if I just go into this chap here, Mark White, if I go into their record, when you're in the record itself, just a kind of a key few things to pull out of here. So you've got your notes section, so you can add in any notes. On email, so it's actually a two-way email integration we have with our CRM system. So it doesn't matter where you're sending the email. So if you're in Outlook, for example, you can send it and it will automatically pick up the email that you're sending it to and save that into the client's record. You can send emails from here. Likewise, if it's an email coming in from that client, it will pick up their email address and file that for you. And got a tab for any text messages that have been sent. You can set up jobs as well in here. So you can set up jobs and assign them to either yourself or colleagues, just to obviously track those and make sure all deadlines are hit. Then got a section here for any documents. So as you can see, we've got kind of the signed contract in here, which automatically gets added in. You can add documents just by uploading them. We have this option here as well, which is visible to client. So if I tick that box when I upload a document, that means that the client can log into the portal on their side and view those documents. So if you think sometimes you'll get kind of phone calls from your clients where they're requesting the same documents over and over again, you can, if you're using CRM, you can just upload it to there, have them have visibility over it. So the idea is they then don't need to call you and take time out of your day. We do have as well, or we are close to releasing a timesheets module. So we won't go into any more detail on that, just because there's a few things kind of I've not been told about it yet, but that's due to be released in the next few weeks. You've got this compliance sync option here as well. So like I say, you can use Nomisma's CRM and compliance suite independently of one another. If you did use both, though, once you've onboarded the client, you can actually sync up their details in the compliance side. So again, rather than having to enter information into different softwares, it's very repetitive and time consuming, you can literally click a few buttons and it will pull that information through into the compliance side for you. The company secretarial module. So if I just go into a client record, sorry, before I do that, you can, as I mentioned, you can incorporate new companies. So you can do it by companies limited by shares or LLPs, and it's just following through the wizard. Like I say, you still pay, I think it's either 12 or £14 to Companies House, which is unavoidable, unfortunately. But to actually create a company in Nomisma in the CRM software is free of charge to do. So obviously you can then charge that or charge for that service, or just offer it as a value add. You've got the calendar here as well. So this, as you start adding in the tasks and deadlines, you can track them from here, or you can track them through the dashboard as well. Any upcoming activities or overdue activities, you can track them from here. We then have a number of reports as well. So you can, in reports, you can actually build up your own reports based on literally any kind of field that's in the CRM system. So you've got a lot of flexibility there. You've then also got these analytics reports as well. So it'll show you things like kind of how successful you're being with leads, how many have come into the business by month, for example, where they've come from. So you can then obviously channel your resources accordingly if you are doing outbound marketing. But yeah, you can, as you can see, you can report on pretty much everything in the system. That is pretty much everything in regards to the software itself. Just one final thing that I kind of failed to mention just in regards to the pricing side. Like I say, there's a £5 plus VAT minimum spend per month. So if you just had the one bookkeeping client on there, that would cover that. But when you, as a practice, sign up to Nomisma as well, we also have a customer success team. So the idea behind the customer success team is they're on hand to kind of let you know what kind of training is available, and it's all free training with ourselves. So what training is available? We've also got kind of marketing collateral that you can use on your website. We provide training as well to your clients. So obviously, if you started to use Nomisma, if and when you then start taking on clients, rather than you taking time out of your day again to show them how to use the app and upload things and basically use the system, you can just direct them to a webinar that we host frequently, or send them a recording of it, and it will basically get them up to speed on the software as quickly as possible. We also as well list you on our partner directory on our website. So if any businesses come to the Nomisma website looking to use the software, they get kind of directed and funneled through that channel so that they can potentially find you. So it's just a nice little kind of freebie, bit of marketing for you as a practice.